The board held its executive session earlier this evening. We're now ready to go into the public portion of our meeting. Right now, we have 35 participants, including members of the board, administrators, and of course, our board attorney, Athena Cornell. I will try to keep you apprised of as that number increases. The board did receive some written communications since our last meeting, which was March 15th. And I will go hopefully in the order that they arrived here. On the 19th, we received an email from Yasemin Veland about suggestions for lunch options for our students. And Mr. Phillips responded to that. We received an email on the 19th also from Jacob Schwan mentioning the changes in the CDC distancing guidelines and possible changes in school distancing, and Mr. Phillips got back to him. We received an email from Meredith Busby on a personnel matter. We cannot speak about personnel in public session, but the appropriate administrator responded to Ms. Busby. We received an email on the 24th from Jennifer Felton Bougely about the timeline for changes to the elementary schedule. And I believe Mr. Phillips responded that we were evaluating information from not just CDC, but our local director of health. We received a lovely email from Beth Bernasconi on the 26th with a host of dyslexia resources, which was wonderful. We received an email from Julie Stolte on the 5th regarding the capital expenditure for gutters, specifically copper gutters. And I believe that Mrs. Murphy has addressed that and will also possibly comment on that in public session. We received an email from Lavi Raghavan indirectly through Duval and Jocelyn, speaking about concerns about the Asian American Pacific Islander, AAIP, hate and discrimination issues. And I believe Mr. Phillips will address that this evening. And then finally, we received an email from Kylie Crabb on the subject of To Kill a Mockingbird and the high school curriculum. For emails that just came in today, there may not be a full and complete answer right now because there just has not been time to prepare. So, but for those who emailed today, rest assured there will be follow-up. And those are the written communications that we received today, that we received since last meeting, excuse me. Now I will go right into the president's report. I'm pleased to announce that Governor Murphy in his press conference today announced that by the 19th of April, all New Jersey residents age 16 and over will be eligible to be vaccinated. So we're moving right ahead on the vaccination front. And that was an unequivocal statement with no exceptions. So I think that that is good news. The legislature is currently on what they call budget break, which means that they are considering the state budget, including all the components of that budget, which of course includes our state aid and the whole education department budget. They will be, they're finished with public testimony now, so they'll be interviewing the heads of state cabinet departments, including the Commissioner of Education, who will be asked to respond to queries about how they prioritize expenditures. I'm sure that they'll be asked about the infusions of federal money designated for education. It's usually a very enlightening session with the Commissioner of Education and the two legislative budget committees. Superintendents and boards all over the state are already planning for next fall, not to mention all the events that take place, rites of passage that take place before the end of the year. And I just wanted to go over some of the questions that are being asked of the administration, Governor Murphy's administration, and the DOE. As you know, our current situation, we're in a state of emergency, and certain rules that schools and other entities operate under change because there's a state of emergency. But the hope is that by the fall, the state of emergency will be lifted, in which case some of those emergency measures will no longer be in place unless there are changes made. So there are several questions that people are asking, which is, if the state of emergency is not lifted by September, and we all hope it will be, but if it is not, will the all remote education option still be available? There's been a lot of discussion around this, and there still is. As some of you know, the governor now 10 days ago made an unequivocal statement that everybody would be 5 days a week in person in the fall. And that created a lot of controversy. He then made a follow-up statement saying that people who are medically fragile and students and teachers who are medically fragile might be exempted. But it all hinges on whether the state of emergency is lifted or not. So we need to hear about that. We need more clarification on that. If the state of emergency is lifted, does in-person education mean in the classroom 5 days a week? Or does it include students who might be attending in hybrid mode? Hybrid mode was not something anybody thought about really before the state of emergency. So that's a question. There are still questions about that medically fragile exception, particularly if the state of emergency has been lifted. If the state of emergency has been lifted, technically we wouldn't have any remote instruction option. So that needs to be clarified. And finally, if the state of emergency has been lifted, what should schools do if classes or students have to be quarantined as the result of scattered COVID outbreaks? So the point of all of this is that there are a lot of questions that have to be answered. We need some policy answers, possibly some administrative code changes in order so that local districts can clarify options and information for the parent community. So some of the things that many of you probably have thought of and are asking about are things we really need guidance from the administration on. And as soon as we get that guidance, we will share it with all of you. And that is the President's report, Superintendent report.
Thank you, Betsy. I'm going to share my screen, so just a second, please. Okay, so I want to give a quick update of where we are with the new cases as it relates to COVID. So last week we had some quarantine issues that originated outside of school and on activities that are not related to school functions. It required a number of students at Ridgewood and at the high school to end up being quarantined. And we had 2 COVID cases. I'm going to go back and review the number of COVID cases just to make sure. Recently, we've been getting a lot of reports during the weekends, and I'm not sure if they're going, which week those cases are being reported back on. Typically, this chart is filled out on Friday afternoon. So cases that might have happened Friday night or Saturday. I don't know if the nurses are putting them on this week or the following week. So I will clarify that as we move forward. And you can see the number of cases within the town continue to rise. But I've been pretty steady, about 50 new cases a month for the last several months. As we're looking at our moving forward plan, the high school on March 22nd, seniors attended daily. We did have a large number of high school students who decided to convert from remote only to being hybrid students. And when that happened, it affected our ability to have more students come in We were at one point we were able to have students come in daily if the number stayed steady, but based on the number of students who decided to move from remote only to hybrid, we couldn't maintain that 6-foot social distance, which is required when at the high school, middle school level, when we're at a high risk level, which we currently are. Today, Ridgewood Avenue Schools started their first day of all the students attending daily. And the elementary students have a different criteria when it comes to social distancing. It is a 3-foot social distancing requirement. So Ridgewood Avenue School started their attendance daily. On March 29th in the primary schools, we started a rotational playtime, recess time for our students. So I know there's a lot of excitement in the building last week as students got out to use the playground for the first time. And on April 26th, we will be shifting from our AM, PM cohorts into our students attend daily on a half-day schedule. So all the students will be in the classroom together if you are attending in-person instruction. And then we're still working towards having a full day sometime in May. We'd like to see these numbers improve in our region, but there's also a lot of logistics issues when you're looking at lunch where you have to maintain a 6-foot distance and having the ability to do that with a full student body. I want to recognize some students at the high school who had some nice achievements that's happening throughout our region. Junior Holly Vincent won the 2021 scholarship as a premier destination for domestic immersion experience. So congratulations to Holly. Senior Josie Lang was named honorable mention for the New York Times Critical Review Contest. It's a contest that our seniors have been participating in the last few years, and we always have a couple seniors recognized. So congratulations to Josie. Freshman Spencer Marvillo was our regional winner for our Shakespeare competition, and he'll be moving on to the national competition. So that's always great to see. And if he's getting that experience as a freshman, expect big things from him in the next 4 years. And I'd like to recognize last year's class of 2020 who were in the yearbook class. They were nationally recognized by Jostens, who does our yearbook for best cover. There's roughly 10% of the covers recognized by Jostens every year. So this is a terrific honor for our yearbook. Now, I want to mention some facility projects that are happening during our April break. So if you see people at the school, we continue to be busy here. At Central School, we have to address some edging around the playground surface. At Linden Avenue School, we're going to be having some tree and brush removal on the side of the building. Forest Avenue School will have their playground service replaced. And at Ridgewood Avenue School, there's going to be repairs associated with the front driveway and the sealing and cleaning of the front facade. So please be respectful if you're seeing individuals working on our buildings. I do want to speak about a few initiatives that have begun and will continue to work on throughout the remainder of the school year. One of our goals this year was to have an equity audit, and that's part of the district plan of developing a comprehensive equity plan. So, and the point of the audit is to conduct an evaluation and an assessment of our current K through 12 school curriculum as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion. At the last board meeting, we approved Olive Branch educators to conduct that audit, and it's important for us to have outside organizations conduct the audit. We think it's having a different set of eyes, not coming in with any biases about the district. It will be helpful to get a more accurate picture of what we're doing in the district as far as identifying some of our strengths and weaknesses. So today we actually sent out surveys to the parents, to the staff, and to high school students. And that is the first part of this audit, is to survey the stakeholders, getting a better understanding of what group we're working with, what are some of their opinions of the schools, what are where do we stand as far as those stakeholders. So it's important that we're getting that information as we're moving forward. And those surveys will be due April 23rd. This next phase is that they will start meeting with groups and having focus groups and interviews. And they will start reviewing some of the current curriculum documents. And that's looking at district data, including academic performance, college acceptance. It might be looking at our discipline records and so forth. Once they've compiled all that information, they're going to come up with recommendations and give us a report on our policy and practices and trainings that we should be moving forward with based on what they've determined are the needs of our district. So, and our plan will be to make sure that report is made public, that everyone has an understanding that of the areas that we do need to address, but also the areas that we're strong in. And I equate this a little bit to the security audit that we had done several years ago, where we had an outside vendor come in, do a comprehensive survey of our districts and our security issues, identified some strengths, but also identified areas that we needed to address. And we spent a great deal of time, money, and effort to address those security issues to make a safer environment for our students and staff. So what we're looking to do with our equity audit is making sure that we're meeting the needs of all our students the best that we can. So that information will be essential as we're moving forward. Another district initiative, which is also a district goal, is strategic planning. And again, we're looking for an outside group to come in to facilitate that process. Strategic planning is usually a 5-year plan where you're reviewing your mission statement. You might develop a new mission statement if it's needed. You're creating district goals and you're creating an action list in order to meet those goals. It is part of the QSAC process is that you do have a strategic planning in place within your district. And just to give you a little bit of history, we haven't really had a comprehensive, complete school community process as far as strategic planning is concerned. We've had different versions of it where we've done a picture of the graduate, we've done Mission 2020 with individual buildings, but this is going to be a more comprehensive approach where we're going to have subcommittees working on identified components of education that we deem necessary to be successful, and we're going to be working with the parents, the staff, the students, community groups in town to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our community. So we expect this to be probably a longer process than the equity audit or the other audit we're looking to do, the special education audit. We're hoping to get those, the equity audit will be useful information as we're developing our strategic planning. Currently with the strategic planning, we did identify several organizations that could facilitate the process. We've gotten proposals, and there was a committee that included Betsy, John Lawler, the high school principal, myself, Mary Lynn Savio, who is a teacher and the association president, and home and school president, who served in the committee and listened to the proposals. And there's a Q&A sessions after a presentation. So right now we're reviewing referrals, and then we will then decide on which organization we move forward with to help us through that process. Last initiative that we're looking to do is a special education audit. And I've reached out to several firms. I received their proposals, and I'm in the process of now forming a committee to review those proposals and hopefully have those organizations provide us a presentation to get a more in-depth understanding of how they see that process operating. I do, as we're talking about equity issues, usually really talk about character development, and I do want to talk about student development a little bit tonight. A lot of times when we think about students, we really think about the academic development of the students, but it's just as important, if not more important, is you're dealing with the character, social emotional components of the students, because if those social emotional components are not in place, it's going to hinder the academic development. So typically, when we're talking about student development, we're talking about the social emotional learning, and you see some of the subcategories that fall under social emotional learning. And this is a topic that's been stressed the last couple of years in districts where we're talking more about responsible decision making and social awareness and self-awareness. You might have heard your child talk about zones of regulation, and just making them more aware of where they're at emotionally at a moment, and being better able to handle those situations since they are more aware of themselves. And traditionally, the character education that we've done throughout the year, and the 6 pillars of character educations are listed there. It's important that we understand that these concepts are embedded into our curriculum. We're seeing lessons from literature and history that are happening when it comes to student development, and those are lessons that are reiterated to the students as we're going over historic moments, and we're reading novels, or to make sure the students get a full picture of not just the content, the subject content, but also understand how it relates to them. There's also daily reinforcement of these concepts through student recognition programs that happen within the schools, community service events that seem to constantly happen in the buildings, which is a great opportunity for students to learn about citizenship. And within the classroom routines, a lot of times we will have dedicated classroom times. Morning meetings, a perfect example where a lot of these things are reviewed and gone over. In the older classrooms, you'll see a lot of current events where the teacher's taking times, especially more in the humanities class, where they're taking times to go over current events and have those important discussions with their students. And there might be times where you're going to see a classroom lesson just dedicated to one of these topics, just to enhance student understanding. And then there's what I'll call these special moments where it's either the guidance counselor coming in to do a lesson. It could be assemblies. It could be different programs. You think about Start the Day with a Hello program. Ridgewood Avenue started crash houses this year. A couple of years ago, we at the high school and for the 5th and 6th grade, we adopted Lifelines program. We've had cultural awareness nights down at the primary schools. So there's a lot of different events that are happening because we want to make sure that we are developing qualities within the individual and not just focusing on the academics. And that brings us to a point where when there are events, and the most recent events that I sent a letter out to the public was the tax on some Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. And we want to make sure when we have events that are getting highlighted or students are exposed to, that we have these moments to refer back to, that lessons that we've already taught, qualities that we've already reinforced in them. And then what typically will happen is there will be classroom discussions or classroom lessons in these events. At the high school, you see a lot of discussions going on, the various club that are there to serve the students. I know at the high school currently, as far as the AAPI, they're talking about what they can do to raise awareness. And I believe the middle school group is working on a public service announcement. And in May, I know that is Asian American Pacific and Islander Heritage Month, and the principals are talking to their teachers about ways that we can recognize and celebrate that group. And this is a new subgroup that we really haven't focused focused on. But we were also, receiving a number of letters from parents in town who've experienced some bias in their lifetimes or within their family members. It's important that we make those adjustments, but it's just as important that we're making sure that the students have had an opportunity to learn the skills and the character traits that are expected of them, so they can handle these discussions and they can act in a proper manner when dealing with these types of conflicts that may be occurring. And part of it is also that we're taking the time to work with our staff to make sure that they are trained. And as I mentioned earlier, equity has been a focus for the district throughout the last couple of years, but this year we really stressed it, forming an equity committee at the end of last school year. And throughout this school year, we've provided monthly staff trainings. There's been implicit bias training happening with staff. We've been sending monthly newsletters out to the staff that includes some content on self-improvement, but also includes content on how to implement strategies in your classroom to make sure that you're teaching effectively in an equitable manner. Professional development has happened through our staff members, but also through outside groups. This is a discussion that's happening at the grade level and within the department meetings. And we've been doing some reviews on our curriculum to make sure that that we are moving forward in a manner that serves all our students. So these are all components that go into making sure that we have a fully developed plan in place, and that we're not just reacting, but we're being proactive. So I want to keep that in mind as events happen throughout our lifetimes, and as educators, we're trying to deal with them, but we're dealing with them in a proactive manner here in Glen Ridge. And I do want to mention a couple other items. The first one is we are looking to approve a contract for an outside vendor to take over our child care program. And this is a result of really not having the numbers that we've had in the past, and part of obviously a large part of that is the pandemic, but also making sure it's become an administrative challenge for us to manage that program as we're managing so many other things in district. So we did put out a request for proposal, and we took, I believe there were 7 companies that bid to run our child care program. We are based on the proposals. We did set up a criteria, and that criteria resulted in Alpha Best being awarded the program, the child care program. And some of the things that we wanted to make sure that happened is that the program will continue to operate the same hours. We want to make sure that our current staff would be available to work with that group, which they will be. We wanted to make sure that our rates stayed the same, so there wouldn't be an impact on financially on our parents. And we wanted to make sure that it was a comprehensive program that had a curriculum, that had enrichment activities. So based on their proposals, all those requirements were met. We did reach out to several districts that currently use them, and we received glowing remarks back from those school districts. So it's going to hopefully give us a company that will come in here and whose focus is the child care program, and who will be able to provide services that perhaps we weren't able to in the past. But more importantly, we're looking to maintain the program that we've had in place in the sense of providing before and after care the same hours, and making sure that the rates are not changing for the parents. We will be speaking to the directors of the program, and we'd like to offer a parent orientation to them as towards the end of the school year, as families are thinking about signing up for next school year. So that's something that I will provide information to the public once we schedule that. And I believe that's it, Betsy.
Okay, members of the board, any questions on any aspect of the superintendent's report?
I have two questions.
Okay, Heather?
My first question has to do with the equity audit. A friend of mine just sent me a couple screenshots that showed errors in the survey that went out. So could you, for example, it was strongly agree and strongly agree, no strongly disagree. So can you speak to why you chose Olive Branch is my first question. And then for my other question is about the strategic planning. Could you give us some more information about what you requested from those firms you looked at, what the evaluation criteria you're using is to make your selection?
Certainly. As far as Olive Branch, we did reach out to their vendors. I mean, their previous customers, and they, again, glowing remarks from them. There's not a lot of companies out there that provide this service. I think this is a relatively new service we're seeing in education. As far as their typo mistakes, that's something I will address with them. With the strategic planning vendors, again, I believe I had reached out to 5 vendors who facilitate strategic planning. 3 of them got back to me. 2 of them provided proposals. One of them just reached out to me and was quite frank with me, just saying that they believe they were out of our price range, which they were. They typically deal with larger districts than smaller districts. So when we looked to evaluate, we looked at how they got the community involved within that process, past experience of doing strategic planning. We looked at the price, we looked at and the references.
And any guidance to them on what you were looking for?
I spoke with all 3 companies about what we were looking for as far as what we had gone through the last couple of times through what I would call our unique strategic planning. I spoke about getting the community involved in the process. That I wanted it to be a more comprehensive process than what we had gone through the last couple of times.
And is the focus going to be the entire district? Because I noticed the administrator and it seemed like it was very high school.
I'm sorry, is a what?
I'm asking if it's focused on the high school, like it seemed like the last strategic planning was, or if it's going to be a whole district approach.
It is a whole district approach. The parent I had on the committee is an elementary home and school president.
Oh, I thought it was a high school.
No, she was an elementary, and she contributed the elementary perspective, I thought, very well to the discussions with the entities that were seeking the contract.
Okay.
Other questions on any aspect of the superintendent's report from the board?
I have a couple of questions.
Sure, Anthony.
Well, one question and one comment. I'm pretty happy to see that, after this, as part of this equity audit, you're reaching out to the community to get their feedback. I think that's a great thing, and I would encourage everyone in the community to look at that survey, answer it, and get your feedback into the board. Second was, you said that there was going to be, when you got the survey back, was there going to be a second committee to help evaluate the responses? Or I'm not sure I followed that, or maybe I misheard you.
No. So the second phase is them collecting well, the first phase is them doing the survey and collecting all the data from the district. And the second phase for them is then to analyze all that information and come up with recommendations for curriculum, practices, and district training. The outside groups will be Olive Branch will be making those recommendations.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Jocelyn, did you have a question?
No, I just wanted to ask for the components that are not paper-based or electronic surveys, but if there are actually interviews or focus groups conducted, will those be parents and community members volunteering to participate? Will there be sort of an open request made for participants, or will it be selected individuals?
We'll put it out open, and depending on the reply, we might have to do some random selection. I'm not looking to select individuals. I think that takes away from having an outside group if I'm hand selecting who's providing input.
Other questions on any aspect of the superintendent's report? Okay, we have now come to the public comment period for agenda items only. As you can see, we've covered quite a lot of items. And we have, for those of you who are with us regularly, and right now, I should add, we have 67 of you, 67 people on. If you wish to speak, use the raise your hand option, which is down by the participants tab on the lower part of your screen. Identify yourself as a Glen Ridge resident. You have 2 minutes, and I will time it on with a stopwatch feature. And if you have multiple questions or comments, emulate our board members, Heather and Anthony, and let us know all of your concerns at once so that we can address them quickly in the order that you've given them. And also know that we have a second public comment at the end of the meeting. So if for some reason you think of something and didn't get a chance to ask, there is another opportunity. So with that, please raise your hand and let me know what your thoughts are. I see Yasmin Whelan.
Hi, Betsy. Hi, Dirk. Thank you so much for your updates. One question for you about the transition to the extended day, as well as the transition to the full day, including lunch in May. I was hoping you could speak a little bit to what that will look like logistically, and if you are envisioning that it will be structured within the current CDC and New Jersey DOH guidelines of 3 feet of distance while masks are on and 6 feet of distance during lunch, or if you're anticipating additional lifting of restrictions. And basically, I'm wondering how you're going to manage lunch. And a related question is, if we're going to wait until April 26th to extend the day at Forest, Linden, and Central, and we're going to have the kids 6 feet apart in May for lunch anyway, why not just kind of rip off the Band-Aid and start doing lunches on April 26th, especially at the end schools where the kids have so much trouble with transitions at their young ages anyway, where they benefit the most from being in school in person and where the risk of COVID is lowest. Sorry, I know that was a lot.
No,
That's okay.
Thank you.
So when we start talking about the transition to the extended day, the primary schools are going to have a more difficult process here, and that is based on the cohorts we set up. The AM PM worked very well for the hybrid model we were in for the primary students, because they got to come in every day if their parents chose for them to come in and get their math and language arts lessons done in person. As we're looking to go to the full, all the students in on a half day, again, there starts to become a lot of conflicts working that out, where we're looking at parents rescheduling their childcare at home. We're looking at shared staff now that have to make their way through 3 buildings. We're looking at rescheduling student services, classroom setup. So there's a lot that's going on, and that's why we were delaying the primaries a little bit. We started considering going on April 19th, but we also realized a lot of students will be quarantining because of travel reasons, and we didn't want to start off having all the students back with a portion of the classroom missing that first week and not having the experience, and then the teacher having to go through classroom procedures again when those students return. So we thought this would save us some time during the school day. The lunch day is a challenge for us, and that's because it's going to be a location. Having 3 feet in the classroom, that's easy to do because you're confined to those 20 to 23 kids in that classroom. It's not going to be difficult. But when we're talking 6 feet, obviously that can't happen in the classroom. But when we're looking to do lunch, we can't put the first grade in the cafeteria and have them spaced out to 6 feet. So that's what our next obstacle we're going to be working on, that Dr. Carabello and Mr. Murphy and I will be sitting down and talking about how can we do lunch. The spaces are a little bit more limited at the primary, so we're going to be thinking outside the boxes a little bit to how to make that possible. So that's one of the reasons why we're not just ripping off the Band-Aid and saying, let's go 6 feet. The second, I think we've been very cautious to make sure that we're providing a safe environment. And I've spoken about this in the past, where I want to make sure that we're moving intentionally and we're monitoring situations when we're making significant change. And this is going to be a significant change of having all the students in the building. So we want to see what happens when that occurs. What are some of the challenges? And that's going to help us identify problems as we plan for a full day with the students. But that is still on our radar. We want to make sure that happens before the end of the school year, and that's one of our goals. I don't know if the CDC or the New Jersey Department of Health are going to have updated guidance at this point. When we start looking at some of the numbers that are happening throughout the state, it makes me wonder if that's going to happen. But it seems like Governor Murphy has consistently eased some of the restrictions that are happening, even though our numbers have not decreased throughout the state. And I know today the New Jersey Department of Health adapted the CDC recommendations. If you're fully quarantined, you do not have to quarantine for the travel restrictions. So that's information that I'll be releasing out tomorrow to the public.
Sir, can you talk about what's happening with the virtual kids? Are there any left with the switch to coming for a longer stay?
Well, and that was another reason why we were switching. But thanks for bringing that up, Heather. The virtual students are going to see a change in their instruction at the primary. At Ridgewood in the high school, they're staying in the same instructional model. So if you're virtual and you were prior to all students attending daily, you're not going to see a change on the instructional model. For the students who are going to be at the primary level, they're going to see more of a model like Ridgewood. We're looking at utilizing some of our classroom aides to work with the students online who are virtual only. So we're hoping we can dedicate a para to streamline that process and to help the students who are virtual.
Okay, thank you. I see Bernice Clark.
Hello, thank you. I'm Bernice Clark Bonnet, and I am a Glen Ridge resident. And I had 2 questions. First, I just wanted to thank you for going through such a complete overview of the strategic planning and audits that are in place. And my first question was, are there any timetables? I know that when you're doing these kind of audits, there are so many different steps to them, and periods then when the work comes back and then it goes back out for another review. So are there timetables for these 3 audits that you'll be able to share at some point? And then my second question was just to better understand the goals in place for the special ed audit. Thank you.
Thanks. Here.
There will be timetables once we complete the process of hiring, of approving someone. So for the equity audit, I believe I had it on my slide. We expect the report from Olive Branch educators to be constructed, written, and submitted to us in June. So we'll be able to hopefully share that at one of our June meetings. If not June, then we'll share it at our July meeting, and perhaps probably again in the September meeting, because I know we don't get a large audience member participation in July. As far as the strategic planning and special ed audit, once we agree with the vendor, we'll sit down and look at the timetable with that vendor. For our special education audit, it's again, we want a comprehensive approach. We want to understand what we're doing well and the weaknesses we have. We want them to look at services that we're offering. We want to look at the process of being identified and developing an IEP. We want them to look at our out-of-district placements and evaluate are the programs that we could be running in-house that would be better serve our students. So we're really, and we want to look at our child study team and saying, are we using them in an efficient manner? Are we understaffed? Are we overstaffed? So we want to get a very clear picture of where we are with the entire process when it comes to special education.
Okay. I see Jacob and Allison. Jacob and Allison? I think you're muted still.
Hi, Betsy. How are you? Thank you for your wonderful response that you spoke of earlier. I just wanted to make a quick correction. I still have yet to hear back from Mr. Phillips on that, and I look forward to his response.
Thank you.
My email. So thank you. Secondly, about the lunch issue that was brought up earlier, if we have 3 feet of social distancing in the elementary schools and the kids still have to wear masks and there's no end in sight for them wearing masks, I mean, probably even into next year when they attend school, I think I'm correct. How do you get past that? And also when we're driving by and picking up our daughter from Central, all the other kids are playing outside without masks on. And it's just a little concerning that that rule isn't applied. And I see Mrs. Yaros Ramos is shaking her head because I know she understands that we're seeing a lot of hypocrisy here in the way that the mask implementation is being drawn out. But the kids aren't going to get vaccinated at least until next year, if they get vaccinated at all. And I don't see the masks going away next year. So how do we really plan on moving forward with lunch? That's my first and foremost question. Hope that was a lot nicer than last time.
And thank you. And thank you for your email. Dirk, I know much depends on what clearly. Can you address those questions?
Yeah, well, with lunch, I think it's a little bit of trying to think outside the box. Do we start setting up tents outside in areas to have lunch? I think you need to find multiple spaces to have lunch in order to set them 6 feet apart. Can we think about maybe having opportunities during this school day that we shut down and parents come up and pick their children up? Maybe not every child can be picked up, but maybe it's enough then that we can socially distance in the lunchroom if that's a possibility. Supervision wise is a question too. Can we make space of the classroom and the lunchrooms where we only have a portion of the students in there? And that's where that becomes a little bit more challenge. If we're using multiple areas, we have to provide supervision in those multiple areas. So again, those are great questions that we're looking to try to come up with solutions, because we know that is our next step as we're moving forward, is providing a full day.
Dirk, specifically, can you elaborate a little bit on the masking issue? The current masking issue?
Well, masks have to, in schools, masks have to be worn. That's part of the governor mandate, unless there's an exception to the rule based on health reasons. Or there's a few other exceptions. Obviously, if you're eating, then the mask has to be off. In the elementary setting, currently the social distancing is 3 feet. When children are eating, the social distancing then, because masks are off, have to be 6 feet. And that's where the problem is with having enough space with all the students in the building. The gentleman mentioned students perhaps not wearing masks outside. That's something I will address. I'm not aware of that. We do allow students, though, if they're to have that mask break outside, but they must be maintaining social distancing. So I'm going to make sure that is reinforced.
Okay. Thank you. I see Lori Davis.
Thank you. I had 2 questions. Sorry, I'm Glen Ridge resident, 2 children, 1 at Central and 1 at Ridgewood Avenue School. The first, you're discussing lunch as though we don't already have a snack break at Ridgewood Avenue School, which is over half an hour long, and the kids do need to unmask to eat. So I'm wondering, on rainy days or inclement weather days, what is the plan for RAS now? Because they are already back in a full classroom, regardless of when we extend the day to a full lunch, they're already eating. So I wanted to know, what is the plan currently? My second question was about quarantine guidelines. I know there have been some issues of late where, outdoor sports teams, having an entire team having to quarantine from school, when, the research and the science does show quite clearly that outdoor transmission is incredibly low, especially if masked, of course. Whereas with cases in the exact same classroom, students are not having to quarantine if there's been a case. So I just sort of want to get clarification on that policy. And to know if the quarantine policies are going to change now that, again, there are more students in the class and they are at that 3 feet versus the 6 feet distance. Thank you so much.
So the plan at Ridgewood, obviously, if the weather's nice, that the students are outside having their snacks so they can maintain the 6 foot distance. If the weather is inclement, and the students have to stay in, they are looking to do snacks in shifts in the building. So any students who are eating are with mask off will be 6 feet apart. So it's going to be a little bit more of a process when that happens, but that's something that is going to be in place for those students. As far as quarantining, the guidelines, there are certain situations that are not clear, and whenever we have those situations, we're reaching out to the local health department and informing them of the situation and taking their guidance. And that happens a lot with athletics, where we're not always sure who's been within 6 feet of each other for 15 or more minutes within a 24-hour time period. If you have a sport that has a lot of physical contact, chances are that we're going to get the recommendation that the whole team needs to be quarantined. As far as quarantining in the classroom, as long as, again, we're following the mandate prior to all students attending the 6 foot mandate. If that happens, then the classroom, just the individuals who were less than 6 feet for 15 or more minutes would have to quarantine. And that's part of the reason why you spread out the students in the classroom. One of the issues we have with the new 3 foot social distancing requirement is that students who, the quarantine rule is still based on a 6-foot social distance. So if a student is positive at school, we're going to see some quarantine happening for those students who are within 6 feet of that student. So that's something that we're aware of, and we're going to have to deal with.
I see Allison.
Hi, everyone. Thanks.
We lost you for a minute, Allison. I think you're muted.
Are you there?
Yes, we are here.
Okay. So my first question pertains to the lunch dilemma. Are the kids are currently seated 3 feet apart from each other in their desks, if have the right understanding. So based off many friends that we've spoken to in other areas, the kids are just eating lunch at their desks with the partitions already in place, and then, you know, throwing their bag lunch out when they're complete, and then they're just going back to in-person instruction. Is there an issue with eating lunch at their desk if they're already spaced out according to the guidelines? And then there's a second part to my question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
We're very curious as to why, because the primary schools have such an issue with needing parents for the remote learning to actually work. We're curious as to why high school was the first to start the in-person instruction as opposed to the primary. It's just, as you've heard time and time again, how taxing it is on us parents having young children at home for remote instruction. I'm just curious as to why you started with the high school. It almost feels, and forgive me, but this is just how I'm feeling. I'm trying to be transparent. It almost feels like we're setting ourselves up for failure starting with the high school, because they're the ones always reporting all these cases where Central, Linden, Forest, you very rarely hear of cases there. So those are the two questions.
Okay,
Can we
thank you.
get your first and last name?
Allison Schwam.
Thank you.
So about, as far as lunch, currently the students are not having lunch in school. They may be having snacks. So again, they should be, the rule is when you're eating, you need to be 6 foot social distancing when your masks are off. So that should be happening in the classroom. And if that's, I'll reiterate that with the building principals so they're enforcing that. The partitions are there as an extra layer of protection, but that does not negate the 6 foot distancing that's required. As far as why the high school, and it was only one grade level at the high school, it was the seniors. And the reasons why the high school moved first is the seniors at that time, actually that move was done prior to the CDC coming out with their new 3 foot guidance recommendations. The high school was done because there's a large number of students at that grade level who were remote only. So we could bring in the seniors and still maintain that 6 foot social distancing, which is what happened and which is what is currently happening at the high school. There's only one grade level that we've been able to do that with and maintain the 6 foot social distancing. So that's why they ended up being first. It was based on being able to meet the old social distancing requirement, which is still a current requirement at the high school because they are at a high risk level.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
A question that I just got a
Sure.
text from a friend. I know we had spoke about how at the high school, not that most students can do every day, but there was going to be an everyday option. You could stay hybrid or you could stay remote. Is that true for Ridgewood? Was there a hybrid option or was it remote or every day?
They had all 3 options at Ridgewood.
I don't think that was necessarily widely known.
Okay. Maybe Dirk, you can follow up on that.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions or comments from the audience? Which, Jocelyn.
I just wanted to add one additional piece to Dirk's response to Ms. Schwam, which was just that, and Dirk, correct me if I'm wrong, but given the model, the AMPM model, and you've talked about this before, it requires a full shift in how fully virtual students are being instructed when we go to a full students in day.
Correct. So the fully virtual students will get, instead of having a dedicated virtual only teacher, which they had up to this point, they're going to be more of a broadcast model, which would be similar to what Ridgewood runs. But again, we're looking to dedicate a pair to those individuals who are still doing remote only. So there will be an adult supervising the virtual program.
Okay. If there is, I would say that, you know, the quality of the questions and the answers reflect how complex this situation is and how our administrators are dealing sometimes with conflicting guidance or guidance that has not caught up to the realities of life. It's constantly changing and evolving situation. So we appreciate all the input and also your patience and understanding in this extremely challenging environment. And now, board members, it is the first of the month, the first meeting of the month. If you have no objections, let's go to the committee and the liaison reports. And let's start, we'll do them in the order that they show up on the agenda. Let's start with curriculum committee. Michael?
Yeah, curriculum committee met, I guess, a couple of weeks ago, and we primarily, we did two things. We primarily talked about CDC guidelines that are probably now, they've all been reported out already to the wider public, and some of which are now obsolete. And then we also did an initial look into the potential effects of the remote learning on students. We just had a brief discussion about that, and it's something that we really are going to be paying a lot of attention to and studying going forward. That's curriculum.
Okay. Personnel, Tracy?
Personnel committee has not met since our last meeting.
Okay. Any other reports from your other liaison assignments?
I do not have any reports this month. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Negotiations, Michael.
Back to me. We're still in negotiations over the administrator's contract, and we expect to be talking soon.
Okay, thank you. Finance and facilities, David.
We're meeting again on the 14th. Our last in-person meeting was March 3rd. We receive updates because this is budget season from Barbara, which are great, and the news has gotten better and better as we've gone along. Dirk did a pretty good summary of the facilities side of things during his report. We have a number of things out for bid, and work continues on our beautiful but old and always in need of repair and updating buildings. So I'll report back after our next meeting about what happened on the 14th.
Great. And communications, we have not, I think you reported out the last.
We did, yeah. Duval reported out on progress she's making on a couple of items. We've not had a meeting since then.
Okay. And going to the liaison reports, let's start with Forrest.
So Forrest has not had a meeting since my last update. They will be meeting this week on Wednesday from 7 to 8. Ridgewood also has not had a meeting since our last updates, and the meeting is currently scheduled for the 26th, prior to what would be our normal meeting time of 8 p.m. However, that will likely be updated, so look to hear something from the Ridgewood Home and School Association.
Great. Grace, anything from Grace?
So the next Grace meeting is scheduled for the 21st of April, a Wednesday night from 7:30 to 9. And there was a meeting on the 17th in which parents were able to ask questions of board members. We covered topics including emotional learning, ESS, the Effective School Solutions Program, Orton Gillingham training that's occurring now and what it looks like for the future, and academic development in period 9.
Okay, thank you. Lyndon?
Linden hasn't met since I last reported out. Their next meeting is the same day as our final budget proposal as well. I don't remember what time they're meeting. I don't know if they've changed that as well, like Jocelyn mentioned.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, who haven't we done? Central.
Central has not had a meeting since I last reported out. They are scheduled to meet the last week in April. I believe it's the 29th. I don't think it conflicts with our meeting.
Okay. And the High School Home and School Association did meet with reports by Mr. Liddy in the absence of Mr. Lawler, Dr. Harris, and Mr. Hill. Mostly the meeting concerned things that we've heard about already, scheduling changes, some amount of discussion of end of the year activities. They are proceeding with project graduation. They're proceeding with all the normal activities we have seen flyers for example, and they wanted me to mention the golf outing, the annual plant sale for those who need plants. So consider supporting project graduation. Mr. Hill's report on activities was mostly sort of enumeration of what was going on with sports and ways that they are trying to keep the various student activities going. And I'm not sure if I reported this already, the 8th grade activity, move-up activity is going to be a carnival. And Dr. Harris said that plans are well underway for that as well. So that is the high school home and school. And I will, with regard to the Glenridge Black Diversity and Inclusion Association, I will note that they had the Women's History Month scavenger hunt, which is a virtual scavenger hunt for students in grades K through 12. It happened March 20th. And the winners, they mentioned naming the winners today. I don't know if that's been done and couldn't find out that information, but I suspect we will have information about winners shortly. Going forward, let's see. Glenridge Educational Foundation, have they?
They have not met since our last meeting, and in fact, they postponed their meeting until I believe like the 19th or 20th. The date hasn't been determined yet. They're still waiting for some more information on programs that they're looking to sponsor.
Okay. GRAA, Anthony, anything?
Nothing new to report. Registrations for outdoor sports are been going out, but they have not notified me of a committee meeting.
Okay. And anything from the gas lamp players?
Hi, how are you? They are, it looks as though they're going to have a summer program. I didn't connect with the lovely people there, but I see on their website, they're going to have a junior gas lamp program, which is terrific for the summer, in person looking to be the option. And they have a teen program that's going to have performance next month. And I did actually connect with Lou Mercurio, who is the president of the Glenridge Patrons for the Arts. And they're going to be awarding scholarships this year to art honor students. There's going to be a selection of winners at the art show. So that's a wonderful option for our seniors.
Thank you. And I would say Lou Mercurio has been involved in GRAPPA for a very long time and has always been a great help with regard to the fine arts in Glenridge. Okay, you have in your package the minutes from the meeting of March 15th, executive session and regular session. Are there any additions, deletions, or other changes to those minutes? Okay, if that is the case, Michael, would you move the minutes?
Yes, so I move M1.
All right, may I have a second?
Second.
Second from David. Last chance, any discussion on the minutes? All right, Barbara, would you call the roll?
Mr. Bonnet,
Aye.
Ms. Boyle Valucci,
Aye.
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Mr. DeLu,
Aye.
Ms. Gottlieb,
Aye.
Ms. Graham,
Aye.
Ms. St. Aubern,
Aye.
Dr. Yaros Ramos,
Aye.
Ms. Ginsburg.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. Before we go on to administration, I see that there is one hand raised, and I want to reassure that individual that we will get to you in the second public comment period, which is towards the end of the meeting. Now, moving on to administration. David, would you move the administrative items?
I move A1.
Okay. May I have a second?
Second.
Second from Anthony. Any discussion on these new and or revised policies and regulations, which I think are almost all in response to legislative and code related developments? Any discussion?
Nope.
All right, Barbara, would you call the roll?
Mr. Bonnet,
Aye.
Ms. Boyle Valucci.
Aye.
Mr. Campbell.
Aye.
Mr. DeLu,
He gave you a thumbs up.
I got it. Mr. DeLu,
Aye.
Ms. Gottlieb,
Aye.
Ms. Graham,
Aye.
Ms. St. Aubern,
Aye.
Dr. Yaros Ramos,
Aye.
Ms. Ginsburg.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. Okay, personnel. Tracy, would you move the personnel items, including the addendum?
Yes, I move P1 through P8, which includes a revision to item P3 and an addition to item P4.
All right. May I
I'll
have a
second.
second?
I'll second. It's Teresa.
Second from Teresa. In keeping with our rules and the board member code of ethics, we discuss personnel related items in executive session. So if no board member has any objection, Barbara, would you call the roll?
Mr. Bonnet,
Aye.
Ms. Boyle Valucci,
Aye.
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Mr. DeLu,
Aye.
Ms. Gottlieb,
Aye.
Ms. Graham,
Aye.
Ms. St. Aubern,
Aye.
Dr. Yaros Ramos,
Aye.
Ms. Ginsburg.
Aye. All right, we're now at the curriculum item. Michael, would you move the curriculum item?
Yes, I move C1.
Betsy,
I think- Yeah.
Betsy,
Yes.
we're gonna table that item because the list that was posted on the exhibit was not correct.
Okay, that item will be tabled, so presumably we will see it at the next board meeting. All right, moving on to the business items. David, would you move the business items?
move B1 through B11.
All right.
I'm sorry, Betsy,
Yes,
on item B6, I believe there was a typo, and that the contract needs to be approved for 2021 to 2022 rather than 2020 to 2021.
yes.
It's actually 20 to 21 is correct as written.
Oh.
Okay, sorry.
All right, but thank you for that. That's, thank you. Anyway, David, would you move the business items?
I still move B1 through
I'm sorry.
B11. We're very focused on typos tonight. This is great.
You know, we have people that are alert at this hour of the day, which I think is a definite positive for a Board of Education. May I have a second on the business items?
I'll second.
From Duval, thank you. Any discussion on these business items? All right, if there is no discussion, Barbara, would you call the roll?
Mr. Bonnet,
Aye.
Ms. Boyle Valucci,
Aye.
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Mr. DeLu,
Aye.
Ms. Gottlieb,
Aye.
Ms. Graham,
Aye.
Ms. St. Aubern,
Aye.
Dr. Yaros Ramos,
Aye.
Ms. Ginsburg.
Aye. The motion carries. We're now ready for the second public comment period of the evening for questions or comments on agenda items or other items that relate to the operation of our schools. And I already see Mr. Donnelly. And Mr. Donnelly, thank you for your patience.
Hey, no problem, Raymond Donnelly. I got a question. I noticed when a guest speaker was allowed to speak to the students at Linden, it was emailed to all the parents. But then that same guest speaker, I didn't know she was speaking to my daughter at Ridgewood. No email was sent out about it. And I sent an email to the principal at Linden and the superintendent, as well as the GRBDIA, and said, do you guys take a look at someone's profiles of what they put online? And it was I questioned some of the things she posted, and I wanted to know if those her views were being pushed to my kids in the classroom. Her name was Spirit Tawfiq. If you do a quick Facebook search of her name and you scroll through her page, may raise an eye.
I think we lost you for a minute. You said may raise an eyebrow.
Yeah, it raised an eyebrow for me, seeing that what she puts up about, talking about white privilege and, showing people with guns, how they only go after a certain demographic of people. I was just curious, like, why is one school put out when there's going to be a guest speaker, and then nothing gets put out to the other, to the parents from another school? And I found out that she was a speaker in the school when my daughter came home and told me about it.
Okay.
And I personally, I would have pulled my daughter out of that lecture, looking at this person's posts that she puts online.
Okay. Dirk, do you want to address that?
Yeah, I'll answer the question. The individual was speaking about Ruby Bridges, and that was the topic of discussion, and it remained on topic throughout the entire presentation. I did sit in on the Forest Avenue presentation. This is a speaker that had been in the district before, and we've had no issues with.
In terms of just the general issue of notification, since I'm not on either mailing list, I'm not familiar with that. Was there notification for the Ridgewood parents, or should there have been, or was there?
I do not recall this. This was a presentation that happened a couple months ago, to be honest. And as you know, I received a lot of notifications, so I don't recall all of them. I will follow up with the principal.
Yeah, please, that'd be great. It's just certain things she puts online. She talks about modern day lynching.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I wanted that in the classroom with my daughter.
Thank you. Okay.
No, that's all I got. Otherwise, I got one comment about the spacing.
Okay,
if you think about it,
please.
Hello.
Briefly, please.
Yes, no problem. If you're trying to do something with spacing, you think about Trey. If you had like those plastic dividers where you can cut them up, and kind of like what you see when you go to like a supermarket or 7-Eleven dividers, is that something that's possible?
Dirk?
We currently use the plastic partitions in the classroom, so but that does not negate the social distancing mandate. That still has to be in place.
Okay, thank you. Other members of the audience, questions or comments? All right, seeing none, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Moved by David, may I have a second?
Second.
Second by Michael. Thank you all, and thank you in the audience for joining us tonight.